Hi, Lou Pulsifer here to continue my series about confusions of game design, in this case about dominant strategies. And the confusion is that dominant strategies are okay. Well, that's true in puzzles, but it's not true in games. And of course this is part of a series. It's primarily about games with human opposition or a strong semblance. And so most of the examples will be from tabletop games, though much of the discussion will also apply to video games. What's a dominant strategy? This is a way of playing a game, in other words a strategy, that is so good you must play that way to succeed. In a puzzle, that's what's expected. You expect an always correct solution, what you do to solve the puzzle. Many so-called games, for example, single-player video games, are far more puzzles than games, and they have such solutions. There may be more than one solution in a video game, but once you figure it out, it'll always work. So, in puzzles, dominant strategy is okay, because players expect it. They don't want randomness to mess things up. They don't want other players to mess things up. One way you can tell, at least in a video game, is if people can do a speed run. If you can do a speed run, there's a solution to the game. And a speed run, if you don't know, is someone goes through a single-player video game very rapidly, 5 or 10 minutes, when it takes many hours to play the first time. They have figured out the solution, and they just follow that solution. You can get this in story games too, because some story games, especially video games, games where the story is built in, are linear. That is, the players must follow a particular path to complete the story, which to me sounds very much like a puzzle, doesn't it? In this kind of story, which isn't the only kind of story you get in games, the dominant strategy or always correct solution is okay if not expected. Now, it's also worth noting that in video games with stories, many of them tend to be linear because it's a lot cheaper to make. If you have a story with lots of possibilities, then you've got to create the content for all those possibilities, and it costs a lot more to make the game. In tabletop games, we have multiplayer solitaire, especially Euro-style games. Often they're for 3 or 4 players, and they are essentially puzzles. There are a few paths to victory that are in fact solutions. These are usually transparent in such games, so it's easy to see these paths. Players have little or no influence on one another, hence the solitaire part. At most, you might be able to block one player's path, but then you're not following a path. You see the derivation of the name multiplayer solitaire. In games, a dominant strategy is a bad idea. First, it's boring. Everybody knows what to do. Everybody knows what's going to happen. What real games, good ones anyway, offer is a variety of ways to play that can succeed in certain circumstances. And those circumstances include who the other players are. It derives from the game, but also from having more than one player. Players provide uncertainty, difficult predictability, yomi, trying to read the intentions of the other players, inventions, things that a programmed opponent cannot provide, even a computer program. If a game has a dominant strategy, it's broken. Now we have to keep in mind that in conventional speech the word game has come to mean an awfully broad selection of things. Not only puzzles, but things that aren't even puzzles like Wii Fit or Wii Music. Or things that are more toy than anything else, Katamari Damacy. But you do design puzzles differently than you design actual games. Because in a puzzle you want to have that always correct solution. In a game you don't. Of course, there's another set of things that we call games that are not something that I think involves much game design, at least. And I call them contests, like hot dog eating competition, Olympic swimming races, Anything you can time or otherwise measure objectively, where the players can't use the rules of the game to affect one another. Now they can always try to use psychology on another, but that's not part of the rules of the game. Pitching pennies against a wall. Typing furiously for 10 minutes and then whoever typed the most words wins. Those are contests. They are not anything like a classic traditional game. So you have to ask yourself, are you designing something that has always correct solutions, and is that what you want? Some designers like one or the other type. I despise puzzles, for example. And some players lean strongly one way or the other. But the thing I want to emphasize here is dominant strategies are good for puzzles, they're bad for games. Keep that strongly in your mind.